We've always been a party in favour of staying in Europe. We want a people's vote now because a lot more is known than was known 2.5 years ago about the terms and about the consequences of leaving Europe. On a ballot paper for a people's vote, we would like to see an immediate final say on the terms of any Brexit deal that is put forward and an option to remain in Europe, spelt out boldly. In fact, we've been in temporary agreements with Liberal Democrats over this election period so that people have a chance of, instead of having to put their vote between competing parties that have both Remain, either vote for Liberal Democrats or for Greens. This has happened in, I think, 80 seats. It shows our commitment, as well as the Liberal Democrats, in wanting to remain in Europe. That goes along with Epsom and Ewell, but we have to remember that there were other constituencies that were against Remain. We think this is the most democratic path to go down. If we are able to pursue this path, then once we are in Parliament and are cooperating with other parties, we will be able to bring in all the other things that were propelling people to want to vote to remain in Europe, like protecting animals, protecting the NHS, protecting health and safety rights, workers' rights, and we will certainly go for an EU Charter of Fundamental Rights.
Well, it would come as no surprise to anybody that as a Liberal Democrat, I've been campaigning to remain in the European Union and reflect the wishes of the constituents of Epsom and Ewell to remain. As Liberal Democrats, we've been campaigning for that since the day after the referendum. We believe it was a flawed result based on some false information. And it was only advisory, and I think as the British public have learnt more about what leaving means and the sort of way that we might leave, then the percentage of people who support Remain has grown. And I think that was reflected in the recent European election results in Epsom and Ewell, where Remain parties certainly secured a vast majority of the votes. So if elected, my first priority would be to try and ensure that we stay in the European Union. If there was a Liberal Democrat majority government, then yes, we would revoke Article 50, but in the more likely circumstances that we can influence a minority party, then our first and foremost priority in government would be to ensure that there was a second referendum, and we would be campaigning strongly to remain.
Well, the first thing to say is the misapprehension about the result. There is no result. There was no count for the Epsom Ewell parliamentary constituency, which covers 3 local authority areas. Yes, Epsom Ewell Borough voted to remain narrowly. We don't know what the result was because there wasn't a count for the areas that are outside Epsom Ewell in the parliamentary constituency. But one way or another, it was a close result. One way or another, there were misgivings in this area about that decision taken by the British people, taken by 17.4 million people. A result I believe we should respect, but also recognising those misgivings, I have agreed and campaigned for all the way through leaving with a deal. It's why I supported Theresa May, it's why I'm supporting Boris Johnson's deal. I think we need to leave as good friends and neighbours. I personally campaigned to leave. I believe that after 10 years working in Brussels on different councils and ministers, that the European Union has to change in a way that is not right for Britain. So I stand by the decision of the British people, but I want us to leave as good friends, good neighbours, to work together in the international arena and to stay on good terms. To do the opposite would be absolutely wrong. To leave with no deal would be wrong. But we have to, in my view, fulfil the democratic will of the whole British people.
So the Labour Party policy on Brexit is to give you the final say on Brexit via a second referendum. If there is a second referendum, I will campaign to remain. I want to persuade as many people to vote Remain as possible. However, I do think that once the second referendum is complete, we do need to draw a line there. If Remain wins, I'll be very happy, and I'm sure the majority of people in Epsom and Ewell who voted Remain will also be happy. But if we lose, we have to accept that result. And then the deal Labour negotiates, which will be put to a referendum, will be the alternative question on that ballot paper. So it'll be Remain versus Labour's Brexit deal. But the key policy is for you to have the final say on Brexit. I was the candidate here in 2017 for Labour, and I stood on a manifesto then of delivering Brexit. But I think now it's gone on so long, it's been so chaotic, we now know so many lies were told during the original Brexit referendum that I just think the people have to have the final say on Brexit, and I will campaign for Remain if there is a second referendum.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that the residents of Epsom and Ewell, for a variety of reasons, have decided that they want to remain in the European Union. And so therefore I think it's important that the MP for this area is a Remain MP. And if you elect me as your MP, I will be able to represent that view free from any party political control. But I think we have to be reasonable, and I think the first and fairest step is to have a second referendum, putting the deal that's on the table now against Remain, but with a commitment to abide by the result, whatever that may be. And so I think I'm slightly different to the Labour and Liberal Democrat positions. Labour seems to think there's another deal on offer, which I can't see the European Union agreeing to. And Liberal Democrats seem to be taking a rather anti-democratic view of, well, we'll campaign for Remain no matter what. So my position to represent the wishes of the constituency of Epsom and Ewell would be to put the deal that's been negotiated to a vote and to abide by that decision. And I think that will be in the interest of this area, because I think it's quite clear that the economic, social and cultural interests of Epsom and Ewell are best served by remaining in the European Union.
I feel sad because species are dying, and because now I even notice if there's a butterfly in my garden. I also feel apprehensive for young people because of the indeterminate nature of their future, not only with extreme weather conditions, but also with what their options are for jobs, for the way of living. And let's not forget the people in Africa and Bangladesh, the people in low-lying countries, those people we are going to be doing trade with, we are going to be mixing with, who are really under threat from climate change. That's how I feel. What are we going to do about it? The Green Party has had a Green New Deal for a number of years on the table. We're very pleased to see other parties picking up this idea, and we hope that our ideas will be taken up by the parties that form the government. That includes keeping all fossil fuels in the ground, whether it's coal, oil or gas. It includes localizing businesses so that there's not so much travel going on, making sure that transport is electric, is fueled by renewables, making sure that there's a heating upgrade on 1 million homes, retrofitting insulation, and every year building 100,000 council houses that are energy efficient to solve the housing problem as well as the climate change problem. Industry, we want to see it decarbonising, localising, in farming and food sustainability, making sure there are 700 million trees being planted, and finally, making sure that people have a basic income so that they feel more secure.
The biggest issue in this election should be climate change, because it's the biggest challenge the world faces and we all must address for the future of our children and all our futures. Unfortunately, it has been overshadowed by other items, but the Liberal Democrats, if in government and able to influence the government, have a series of measures which would try to start to address the climate change challenges by 2030. This includes all cars being electric by that point. It includes 80% of energy being generated by renewables. The Tory party has rowed back from what were very good policies during the coalition government and encouraged solar energy and wind energy generation on land, and have since reversed those decisions and those subsidies. But we need to urgently reverse that and get to a point where we are reducing our carbon emissions. But let's be honest, we will only do that if we are part of a larger body like the European Union and can influence them, and they can influence the world. We can't do this on our own and in isolation. So Brexit is attached to it, but we need to be part of the European Union to address it fully.
Tackling climate change is going to be and is one of the great challenges for this generation. I'm proud that the United Kingdom is the first country in the Western world to sign up in law to the 2050 goals set by the United Nations. You may hear many things about the dates to achieve net zero emissions, but the United Nations, meeting in Spain in the last few days to tackle these issues, has set 2050 as the goal for net zero. We are the first country to set in law that net zero strategy. We're actually a country that has done more than any other in the G20 to bring down emissions, down very substantially over the last generation, even while our economy has grown. But we're going to have to do much more. That means far more electric cars on the roads as quickly as possible. It means moving away from gas central heating in our houses. It means a big investment in offshore wind. That's the route we have chosen to go for more renewable energy. We think it's less environmentally damaging, and we've already reached a point where by the end of this coming decade, we expect to be generating most of our electricity from renewable and zero emission sources, and a large part of that will be from offshore wind. So there's a lot for us to do, but we are already ahead of the game, and what we have to do is to be leaders around the world. It's why in areas like shipping, when I was Minister of Transport, we were in the lead in the International Maritime Organization of making sure there's a global agreement about tackling emissions from shipping. A lot to do, a lot of challenges to meet, but it can only be done as a team globally.
I'm extremely concerned about climate change, and I do genuinely think we have a climate emergency. This is the time where we have the power to make a difference, and if we don't make a difference soon, we will be in serious trouble. Labour, when they were in power under Gordon Brown, introduced the Climate Change Act, which was the first time government started taking climate change seriously. Some progress has been made then, but I think we hit a brick wall when, to paraphrase David Cameron, he said, "Get rid of all the green stuff." He used a slightly different word, but I think his intention was quite clear. We want to get climate change back on the agenda with a new climate emergency bill to set legally binding targets to make sure we get net zero carbon emissions by the 2030s. We will increase investment in wind turbines, solar panels, insulation. In terms of what I'm personally doing, I'm trying to increase the amount of recycling I'm doing, particularly reducing the amount of plastic that I use. I work as a train driver, so I'm trying to get people in the work that I do on a day-to-day basis to take the train, and that's a subject I'm really passionate about, increasing people's use of public transport, getting people off the roads into public transport. And I think we also have to really push the message in our education system, pushing the message that we do have to take action now to save the planet, and there is still time to do something.
Well, I think there's no doubt in my mind that the defining issue of our age is climate change and in protecting the environment generally. And I think the next Parliament has to really accelerate the measures that it needs to take to tackle climate change. In fact, it needs to be the climate change Parliament above and beyond being the Brexit Parliament. I think one of the things that concerns me a little bit is the slow take-up of electric car use. And there was a statistics today that showed that at the moment these large gas-guzzling SUVs are outselling electric cars by 37 to 1. And in fact, exhaust emissions are increasing, not decreasing. So we need to do something about that. And I think making electric cars cheaper and more easily accessible is certainly one way to do that. I think we need to invest in alternative energy like wind, we need to plant more trees, we need to encourage walking, and we need to encourage cycling. But above all else, I think what I would do is entrust climate change much more to local authorities. Across the country, many local authorities have got climate change action plans that they're drawing up. I think the important thing is for government to put funding into those local climate change action plans, because I think it's local communities that know best how to tackle climate change in their local areas. And I think, so perhaps the one thing that I would promote is a localistic approach to climate change action, putting money into local authorities so that they can shape the response of their communities to climate change emergency.
I think the main thing for restoring confidence in politicians is to bring in more transparency, to bring out the truth, to allow more access to what is going on at the decision-making level. We in the Green Party favour a committee system rather than a cabinet system. This would be bringing in experts, bringing in local people who are stakeholders in any matter, so that their views and their informed opinion can be taken into account. We think that taking the people in local government as well as in central government to account every 2 years at local government level would be very useful, because local concerns change quickly, and therefore a 2-year term of elections, alternate elections, would do. We would like to see a people's constitution written up in some way. Certainly we would want to see real opinions being represented in Parliament through proportional representation rather than the first past the post system, so that everybody's opinion is aired, and so that people have a way of going through their local representatives through that proportional representation system, so that what they think is heard at the central level as well as locally. And we want transparency in lobbying and amongst the think tanks.
Well, trust in politics is a major issue for most people. We have a leader of the Conservative Party who is a proven liar and does not tell the truth on a range of issues. And we have a leader of the Labour Party who certainly his trust levels of what he might deliver and is capable of delivering are also at a pretty low level. And I understand that most politicians are viewed in the same light. However, I do believe I would be different and able to be truthful and honest and sincere in what I believe in and what I would hope to deliver for the people of Epsom and Ewell. I care passionately about this area, its unique nature, the greenbelt areas, and I would work very hard to reflect the wishes of Epsom and Ewell, which includes about remaining in the European Union, but a host of other issues, and strongly believe that my business background and what I've achieved outside politics shows that I can deliver on things, and I can deliver on things that I promise at this election.
Well, the important thing to say is that politics has had a bad name in recent years. There's been too much squabbling in the House of Commons, too much indecision, too much resistance of the result of the referendum, and we've got a job to do to rebuild confidence. The thing I would always say is that if you look across the House of Commons, on all sides and all parties, the people who are elected go there because they want to make the country a better place. The differences between us are all about how you best achieve that. And I think we need to show a bit more respect in politics, a respect to each other, not to attack negatively all the time, to accept that the other side do believe that their way is the right way, but to argue that our way is the best way.
So in my day job, people trust me to drive a train and get people safely from A to B. So I hope people will trust me to be a good constituency MP. But this is an excellent question because politics is becoming so divisive. People are losing faith in politics. And I would just say that we've had an MP in this area who's been a Conservative ever since the seat was created. I want to give people an alternative. I was second last time in the 2017 general election where I got 25% of the vote. I want to be the alternative candidate in this constituency. And if I'm elected, I think the most important thing is to be available and be accessible, hold regular canvassing sessions, regular surgeries, be available on social media, be seen in the town centre, be seen around the town, go and visit sort of people outside local schools in the town centre. I think we have to just heal divisions. I think there's been so much division, particularly on the issue of Brexit, but I think Brexit is an issue that actually encompasses lots of grievances people have had for a long time. So we have to heal divisions. We have to educate people about how politics works. We can get a better level of political discourse and, you know, lead by example. I'm a man of my word and I want you to put your faith in me to be the MP for Epsom and Ewell.
Well, I think trust is a massive issue in our politics right now. I don't think there's any doubt that confidence in the national political parties at its lowest ebb in my lifetime. So what would I be different? Well, I'm a local person. I've lived here for 37 years. I've brought my kids up here. You know, I've been a local councillor. I've served on local school governing bodies. So Epsom and Ewell is a piece of me. So I think you can trust me always to act in the interest of Epsom and Ewell, because what affects me affects you and vice versa. So, but also I would try and be a very different kind of MP. For example, I would set up a series of think tanks, virtual and reality based, to ask you what your opinions are on the key issues that I'm going to be voting on as an MP. So I'm going to be asking and listening to you and not just telling you how I voted just to respond to a party political whip. I think it's important that the constituency office is in an accessible and visible location in the constituency so that it can be used as a resource. People know how to contact me. And third but not least, I think it's important to set up a panel to review expenses and office accommodation outgoings by the MP, so that the public money that the MP is entrusted with is subject to local scrutiny. But above all else, you know, I'm standing because I want Epsom and Ewell to have an MP they're proud of, and I won't be able to achieve that if you can't trust me. So I think if you vote me, I will always put Epsom and Ewell first.
Vote for me because the Greens are different. We don't take a baseline on the economy as our target. We take the well-being factor as central to all of our policies. We have a Green New Deal, which is going to change the way we work, bring in literally millions of new jobs. We say that by working together nationally and internationally, we can change this climate emergency. It happened with the CFCs, it can happen with climate emergency. We also want to have a people's vote, and we think that that is in the majority interest. And vote for me because Caroline is a leader that everybody could get behind, everybody could believe in.
I'm asked this question very often, and in particular I've been asked throughout this election who is best placed and the best candidate to defeat Chris Grayling. I strongly believe that I am, and most capable. I am the local candidate, and most importantly, to answer the question I am asked on many an occasion, why are we a better place than Labour? Then I refer to the European election results, where we were very strongly second place and Labour were fifth. Since then we've had a lot of the tactical voting websites support Liberal Democrats as the people to beat the Tories here, and finally a YouGov poll shows us clearly in second place, 10 points ahead of Labour. So if you want to defeat Chris Grayling, you vote Steve Gee and Liberal Democrats on the 12th of December.
It's been a great honour for me to represent this constituency over the years. I hope to carry on doing so in the coming years, and I have clear ideas of the priorities for the next Parliament. We need to make sure we provide the extra housing we need in this area. I come across too many problem housing cases not to believe we need more homes, but it's got to be done in a way that preserves the character of the area. And I've put forward ideas to the Borough Council and indeed to the government about how to do that. I want a campaign to make sure that Epsom gets most of the £500 million investment in local hospital buildings, that it is the new acute site, and I want some of those 20,000 extra police officers that Boris is planning to recruit to come to this area to make sure we remain a low crime area, but to tackle burglary and other crime when it does happen. I very much hope to get your support. You have my commitment to carry on being a hard-working constituency MP in the coming years.
So I was the Labour candidate at the 2017 general election. I came second in this constituency with 25% of the vote. So if you want an alternative to Chris Grayling and the Tories, the best thing to do is vote Labour. we will give you the final say on Brexit. But I'm also, as a train driver on local railway services and a former guard on lines, including the Epsom line, I'm really passionate about transport issues. I'm really passionate about Crossrail 2, which will really help people in Epsom. I'm really passionate about getting Epsom into Zone 6 on the Oyster card system and the travel card system. And I'm really passionate about taking the railways back into public ownership and cutting rail fares and giving you a service you can rely on. I'm also really passionate about the NHS. The NHS has given me life-saving treatment in the past. I know what it means to have that service and to defend it. So put your faith in the Labour Party. The Labour Party is the alternative here. I hope you all vote for me on December the 12th.
I think the main reason to vote for me is that you could always be sure that I will put the interests of Epsom and Ewell first, above and beyond that of a national party political system. The whip system as it exists now distorts and corrupts political life in the sense that MPs go to Westminster and they can't articulate, they can't be the champions of their local residents because of the whip system in place. So vote for me. You will always count on me to represent your interests. In fact, it's not about me getting a seat in Parliament if you vote for me, it's about you getting a voice in Parliament. If you feel you have a voice in Parliament already, then maybe don't vote for me. But if you feel that your wishes, your interests are not being articulated in Parliament, then why not give me a chance?